the impact came in from the Supreme Court verdict. In turn, we saw a big drop as far as telecom stocks are concerned. Bank stocks also dropped, but the recovery has been very, very astounding. For instance, the Nifty and the Sensex are almost at the day's highest point. Banks have recovered, and so have the telecom stocks to an extent. Idea is up, but Unitech, DB Realty, and Videocon, the other beleaguered companies, are definitely not doing well at this point of time. Let me quickly bring in a prominent expert right now. We have Prabhat Avasthi, Managing Director and Head Equities at Nomura India, joining us right now from Mumbai. Mr. Avasthi, thank you so much, sir, for joining us this afternoon on NDTV Profit. I'm pretty sure that you are much aware of the developments since morning. Let me first get your reaction to this particular development, and how does it actually dampen India's prospect as an investment horizon, particularly for attracting foreign investors in terms of FDI, the kind of problems that the telecom sector is facing right now. Would this actually help in bringing in incremental FDI, or is it perhaps a big sentiment negative in the long term?
Well, I think, first of all, so far as telecom sector is concerned, obviously for the people who got in their investment, it's a negative, because they obviously will have to, even if they have to remain in business, they'll have to pay up more money. But I think at a broader level, you cannot say that it's a negative, because end of the day, it removes, it basically tells you that, rule of the law sort of prevails. And also the fact that I think going forward, you probably will have far more transparency in the way decisions are made. So any transparency that comes either through a regulatory process or a court process, and I think in this process it will probably have more ramifications into other sectors as well, in terms of bringing transparency into auction process of natural resources of the country. I think, I would say that over the long term it should be a positive.
But don't you think that what the Supreme Court has done today perhaps should have been addressed a very long time ago, and still there are certain issues on which there is absolutely no clarity, which also brings us to this important point of policy opaqueness in India. The government says something else, the Supreme Court does something else, and the companies which have already invested thousands of crores of money into the Indian economy, into some of those sectors, without any wrongdoings on their part, is actually facing the heat. So obviously, for more companies to come and invest in the country, wouldn't they first want clarity on policy making, and only then would they take a call?
Of course there will be, but the fact is that if you look at the price at which these licenses were given and at which they were sort of farmed out very quickly afterwards, clearly told you that there was an arbitrage opportunity. So the fact that these licenses were arbitraged opportunities through a process which was opaque was clear to everybody, and I think such a process is always open to questions. I think, for example, you take an example of, mining sector. If you essentially make it a bidding-based process, I think it will be very transparent compared to first come first serve policy, which was the principle in a lot of government sort of sectors in terms of policy, and all such sectors which are bidding-based, you cannot accuse anybody of sort of rigging the process to get licenses. So I think the long term it leads to transparency. Your other question about, yes, obviously there's a loss, and there is no doubt about that. But the fact is that adjustment has to happen between the two partners, people who got the license and sold them at higher prices. I mean, obviously that part is a loss, but I think in the longer term, as far as overall policy gamut is concerned, I don't think you can necessarily call it negative.
You said that it's a positive step from a long-term perspective, but purely looking at the telecom sector, which according to most experts is a very high growth kind of a market. Look at the kind of subscriber base that we tend to see adding on a month-on-month basis. But on the other hand, we have seen high entry costs as far as new incumbents are concerned, and on top of that, there's also the fact that 3G has not really been incrementally positive as far as incumbents are concerned. So at Nomura, what's your view on the telecom sector? First, let me start by asking you that.
Well, I think the telecom sector view per se might be, well, we didn't have a uniformly positive view, but we obviously were positive in Bharti, and that these decisions sort of benefits Bharti. So that is how our thought process was in terms of telecom sector. Now, as far as growth is concerned, I must say that if you look at revenue line of all telecom operators, I don't think there was just too much growth. The growth you're referring to is in terms of volume numbers, has not necessarily translated into growth for in revenues, and that actually tells you that the voice market has actually become fairly saturated compared to the growth that you have seen in the last 10 years. And I think you can go back 4 or 5 quarters and see the numbers. So I don't necessarily agree with the fact that it's a high growth market as far as voice is concerned. 3G is of course a growth market, and for that people have paid the price, and you've seen what kind of price has been paid. So for 2G, for example, I don't think even the incumbents have grown revenues quite significantly in last couple of years.
NDTV's cricket app, Android and iPhone, fastest scorecard, special analysis, and much more. Download free. ndtv.com/apps.